Bruen, former director of global engagement in the Obama White House, joins us now. Kind of wild that you'd poison your one go-between to the Ukrainians if you'd actually want to have peace.
Yeah, dinner is dangerous when you're dealing with Russia, no question about it. But this is the kind of scare tactics that Putin has built his career around, whether it's with dissidents or, for that matter, foreign leaders. There's the famous story of Putin bringing in a dog to meeting with Angela Merkel because he knew that it would unsettle her. And this is that same KGB playbook. And we should, Leland, expect more of this. Russia is not going to negotiate fairly. They're not going to just sit across the table and try to, hammer out the wording of this. They are going to, at every turn, try to lie, cheat, and steal. And then the hard work starts because they're going to try to lie, cheat, and steal their way out of a signed agreement.
Yeah, and we already saw that because they had a signed agreement about the 2014 invasion of Ukraine and clearly are breaking that. This is fascinating to me. You think about the Russians sending their delegation, the Ukrainians who are fighting for their lives, the Russians are slaughtering their countrymen. Do they literally sit across from a table and talk to each other and then somebody drops poison in one of their tea?
Well, look, there's a lot of ways, certainly, that you can do it. And there are a lot of intelligence officers, operatives, contacts roaming around these places, trying to both gather intelligence, but also to engage in some of these kinds of shenanigans. And it was par for the course, certainly with Russia before. I think these days, obviously, with so much on the line for Putin, he is pulling everything and the kitchen sink out. So they are going to try more of this stuff. I think the question does become, what are we going to do as Americans? Because we have certainly some intelligence, some insights onto these kinds of operations. More of it needs to be shared, both publicly as well as obviously with the Ukrainians. And what we have seen, what I saw when I was working on the Russia portfolio, is exposing this operation does a lot to actually limit their freedom of movement. So I think we need to hear more about it, and we need to certainly do more about it.
There is this report out there that Roman Abramovich, his yachts have not been seized, his jets have not been seized. There's a report that the Ukrainian president asked the United States and the Europeans not to sanction him because he could possibly be the one guy to talk some sense into Vladimir Putin. Are we to believe that there's a chance that he could be the answer?
Well, look, you need someone, whether it's Roman Abramovich or someone else who is in Putin's orbit, who can try to pass on messages. But also, this is the problem, Leland, with what President Biden said over the weekend in Poland, is you don't go and suggest that the ultimate decision maker on the other side of this negotiation should be unceremoniously removed from power, because that will just dig him in further to his already intractable position. Yeah. I think we've got to come up with a better strategy for how we are actually going to solve this crisis.
Yeah, this was the tweet from President Biden in 2019. The words of a president matter. They can move markets. They can send our brave men and women to war. They can bring peace. And they can unleash the deepest, darkest forces of this nation like Donald Trump has chosen to do. It feels like in the same way, President Biden's words are coming back to create enormous problems for him.
Well, and look, this has always been Biden's charm. I remember going on foreign travel with him, and it was an effective way of endearing himself both to foreign leaders as well as foreign populations. But at the same time, in moments like this, where words matter even more, you have to stick to the script. You have to ensure that you're not riffing off about regime change. And that's where I think Biden has gotten himself into trouble, not just with the remarks in Poland, but going back to the minor incursion comments or the sort of off-the-cuff labeling of Putin as a war criminal. There has to be a discipline that just hasn't been exerted often.
Bill O'Reilly made the point that he thought that almost Biden sort of didn't know what he was saying. You've traveled with him a lot. Does he really get what he's saying, or is it just sort of a guy whose fastball is leaving him and he's prone to wild pitches?
No, he does. And look, it's been said throughout the day, he was saying the quiet part out loud. This is certainly a topic of conversation in the Situation Room with his advisors. He just has to exert more discipline about where he's saying it, when he's saying it, and how he is saying it. And that has not been his forte during this crisis. And I think it is a moment where the president has to really take a long, hard look at how going forward we're going to avoid the possibility of provoking or saying something that could cause an exacerbation of this conflict.
Yeah, we all have older people in our lives who their filter tends to degrade as they approach 80. None of them are the president of the United States, where the filter matters, as you point out, so much more. Brett, it was good to see you. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.